Hello and welcome to Reinfused. Today is a bit more of a serious toned biographical video, so you can feel free to skip this if you're just here for computing. But I think this is an important part of computing history, and it's actually a subject that's quite close to my heart as well. So let's get straight to it. Alan Matheson Turing was born in 1912 in London. Early on in his life, he showed signs of the genius that would shape his future career, with teachers commenting on his intelligence from as early as 6 years old. Unfortunately, education in the UK at this time was more about the classics than the scientific and mathematical leanings that Turing was exhibiting a liking towards. Several educators tried to deter his choices, but Turing persisted and continued showing incredible talent. So committed was he to education that when a general strike risked him making it to his first day of school at the Sherborne boarding school, he decided to ride his bike the 60-mile journey at 15 years old, unaccompanied, and stopping overnight in an inn, again unaccompanied. Whilst at Sherborne, we see the first glimmers of what is probably the other thing that is well known about Turing. He formed a relationship with a fellow pupil, Christopher Collar Morcom. Some people have described this as Turing's first love, but this was not just a relationship built on love. They also shared an enthusiasm for science that drove Turing even harder. Unfortunately, as a side effect of drinking infected milk, Morcom contracted bovine tuberculosis. He died in February 1930. This seems to have had a profound effect on Turing and caused him to work even harder on the science and mathematical interests that they shared. This also seems to have had a basis of Turing's heavy atheism, which shows up later in his life. Turing went on to continue his studies at King's College in Cambridge, where he gained a first-class honour in mathematics, going on to being elected a Fellow at 22 because of his dissertation on the central limit theorem. In 1936, Turing published a paper titled On Computable Numbers, with an application to the Onchidens problem, a mashing of the German word, I apologise. This paper reformulated Kurt Gödel's earlier work and introduced a hypothetical device known as a Turing machine. This work was important because it laid the groundwork for what was called a universal computing machine, or what would simply be known as a computer today. Turing then moved to Princeton University in the USA. It was here that he added cryptography to his other studies, in a move that would be a bit of an interesting foreshadowing for his future work. The PhD he gained here was based on his dissertation, Systems of Logic Based on Ordinals. This introduced many of the concepts that modern computing is based on. Despite John von Neumann, another luminary of the early computing world, trying to hire him as an assistant, Turing decided to return to the UK. This turned out to be fortuitous because not long after his return, the Second World War broke out. Understanding the need for cryptography, the government code and cipher school was set up. This mostly concentrated on breaking the Enigma cipher machine used by Nazi Germany. Whilst the basic operation of the machines was well known thanks to the Polish, it still required a massive amount of work to decrypt messages. Turing was the exact right person at the exact right time. Using his knowledge of mathematics, he took the existing bomber machines, which the Polish had been using to decrypt German messages for years, and built an electromagnetic machine called the Bomber. With an E. The other one had an A. This had an E. The actual working of the Bomber are beyond the scope of this video. There are lots of videos by much better historians than me that will do it much more justice. I see if I'll find some good ones to recommend in the comments below. During this time, Turing wrote 2 papers on cryptography that were considered so advanced and important to the war effort that they were not released to the public until 2012. Indeed, much of Turing's advances suffered the same fate, including the work that allowed Tommy Flowers, who we have already covered, to build Colossus, the first programmable digital computer. That was unknown for years because it was a secret. It's believed that the work of the cryptologists, and that of Alan Turing, contributed to the Second World War finishing up to 2 years earlier than it could have. Regardless of that exact time, it's undoubted that they saved countless lives. After the war, Alan Turing continued refining his work. Unfortunately, the secrecy around much of the advances he made during the war meant that his work tended to be delayed, and the impact was lost and relatively unknown for a long time. Specifically, his work on the automatic computing engine, ACE for short, which he did for the National Physical Laboratory. This would have detailed the very bones of a stored program computer, but was delayed to such a degree that he became disillusioned and left the project. And it's only because of the superintendent of the NPL, John R. Womersley, that we know how much of that work was his. The pilot ACE was built without him, and it ran its first program on the 10th of May 1950. And many later computers, and again the very bones of modern computing, were inspired and owe a lot to its design. In 1952, when reporting a robbery, Turing was forced to admit his relationship with Arnold Murray. Murray was a 19-year-old man that Turing had met earlier in the year. Homosexuality was a criminal offence in the United Kingdom at this time, and both men were charged with gross indecency. Found guilty, Turing was ordered to take chemical castration, a drug that lowered his libido. 2 years later, his housekeeper found him dead. He was 41. A half-eaten apple was found beside him, and it was reported that he had committed suicide by lacing it with cyanide. The actual cause of his death is still debated. The chemical castration had been discontinued a year before, and the friends had commented on how he had borne the ruling with good grace. The apple was never actually tested for poison, or at least that testing was never entered into evidence. Amidst the rumours, the main point is sometimes lost. However Alan Turing died, we lost a genuinely great man. A man whose actions had helped to save thousands of lives. A man whose work on defining the modern design of a computer has, arguably, contributed to the course of humankind and world culture more than any other person. In August 2009, a British programmer called John Graham Cumming started a petition for the British government to apologise to Turing for his prosecution and overall treatment. It received 30,000 signatures, far too few in my mind, and the Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, issued an official statement apologising posthumously to him. This in turn led to another petition to overturn his conviction entirely. There were many delays and objections, but it was eventually pushed through Parliament. This led to not just Turing's exoneration, but also convictions under similar conditions for other people. It was later termed the Alan Turing Law. Far too late, but welcome at least. The fact remains that the UK and the world lost a genius, a hero and a revolutionary thinker far too early. Anyway, I don't feel like doing my normal outro, so I hope you liked the video, or at least found it interesting. Any comments, please put them below, and thanks for watching.